Well, I want to welcome you to this podcast. My name is Dr. Randy Dirks, and this is Funding the Future podcast. It's designed for presidents of nonprofits and fundraising executives, so it certainly has a lot to do with fundraising, but also addresses things related to leadership and character as we lead in a variety of spheres of life. Well, think about this. Think about a time you faced a real challenge and you were being stretched emotionally in the area of resilience. And that was probably something that you felt well, your back was against the wall. And how do I handle things like that from a personal perspective? Well, my guest today is Tess Vergara, and we're going to talk a lot about that, about how do you address situations that are a little bit beyond what you've been normally used to. You're put into a little bit of a maybe a pressure cooker, and it out of those situations comes how you can address them because of who you are and how you formed yourself. So, Tess, welcome to the podcast, and why don't you just take a moment or two and introduce yourself to our audience?
Hey, Randy, thanks for having me here. It's such a delight. My name is Tess Vergara, Soul Powered Leaders, and I work with leaders who carry a lot of responsibility and are doing well externally, but inside they feel divided. And my focus is helping leaders stop splitting under pressure so they lead from wholeness, from coherence, not from force.
Wow, talk about an important topic to address in a world where there is so much demand on leaders' times, responsibility, roles that they play with a variety of stakeholders. So, look forward to how we can learn from you today. Well, let me start off by saying this. You talk about authenticity and sort of a performance paradox that leaders can get into. So let me put the question to you this way. University presidents and nonprofit fundraisers and leaders in the nonprofit sector often find themselves in high stakes cultivation meetings with what we call major donors, situations that demand authenticity and strategic positioning. I'd like you to use the framework that you've developed and how could a president navigate what you call confidence without performance when they're literally performing institutional needs while trying to build a genuine relationship. For example, what would it look like for a president to operate from conviction, not performance,
Mm-hmm.
asking someone for $50 million gift?
Hmm. Whew, well, I saw this early on in my career at a nonprofit. The executive director was very effective, and not because he was charming, and he was. I used to joke that, during board meetings, it's good that he's easier on the eyes, otherwise, I would be like, yawn. But that's not why he was effective. He was effective because he genuinely believed in the people in the community that he served. And I was the financial controller, and I was always looking at the numbers and thinking, how are we going to get funded for this?
Mhm.
And somehow it always came. And what stood out to me wasn't his fundraising skills, it was the way people relaxed around him. And he would look me in the eye. He got very sick. And even when he was very ill, he never led from pressure or
Mm.
from feeling victimized by his circumstances. With me, he would take the time to slow me down, relax, look me in the eye, ask about my kids, my pets, my life. He really had a genuine interest in my life. And then after he passed, leadership changed, the environment shifted, and I couldn't explain it at that time. This was a long time ago. But the ease that he brought with him was gone. The pressure showed up instead, and work felt really different. And that experience taught me that conviction creates trust without strain.
Hmm.
And performance, which we are all trained to do, can get results, and it does, but then trust feels transactional. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. And so, to answer your question, the distinction is performance is trying to secure yourself through the outcome. Conviction is being settled before the conversation even begins.
Mm-hmm.
And so the donors, the staff, boards, they feel that difference immediately, even if they can't articulate it. And whether it's a small ask or a very large one, $5 or 5 million, the pressure is actually the same. It's not about the amount, it's about what the leader is trying to secure internally during the conversation.
You know, what a transaction, or what a transformation rather, in how people see themselves and how they portray that. The story of your colleague, where you could just, he looked you in the eye and there was that sense of, I'm comfortable with him. I can
Yeah,
be who I am.
yeah.
That, what a what a wonderful way to connect with people. That was a gift.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so good. Well, here's another question. It's around inherited narratives that are in the world, and often they're in fundraising. So you talk about releasing, letting them go, these inherited narratives, and fear-driven thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a powerful term in and of itself, in what you call the mental pillar. So university presidents not only inherit institutional narratives, i.e., we've always done it this way, but also scarcity narratives around fundraising, like donors hold all the power, or we must constantly prove our worth. How do you help leaders identify which inherited narratives are maybe sabotaging their donor relationships, and what does rebuilding that inner dialogue look like?
With this, yeah. So the if you can connect the two, your first question and the second question, the reason there's stress, there's fear, is because a lot of it is because of false inherited beliefs. And they're, not all inherited beliefs are harmful or not helpful. And yeah, like you said, we all carry narratives that we didn't choose.
Hmm.
I apologize.
You've got a little
Um,
wonderful friend there. Yeah, what's the dog's name?
this is Chewy.
Chewy.
Uh,
Okay, well, it's good to have Chewy there. That's totally fine.
I'm sorry. I hope they
No,
keep
we're good.
quiet. Anyway, yeah, so stories about scarcity, power, worth, or even what it means to be faithful. You know, there are narratives like, I need to prove that we deserve this. If this gift doesn't come through, then I've failed. And those stories, they don't stay internal.
No.
They shape how a leader shows up. So even before we get into the room, we need to be settled, right? So that we're not steering the conversation to make us get what the outcome of the transaction. And so what changes things is not strategy, but more awareness. That when a leader realizes a narrative is inherited rather than true, automatically it loosens its grip.
Hmm.
The leaders then stop negotiating their worth through their donor relationship and start leading from stewardship rather than scarcity. So we are experiencing it now. We are in a volatile, high pressure environment, and it's more important to stay internally aligned because internal alignment changes the perceived power dynamic. And so when we as a leader, when we're settled internally, external instability then stops dictating how we show up. And that shift alone changes the tone of every conversation. Not because the leader is doing something different, but because they're no longer leading from the fear they didn't choose. It was inherited. So, I think this correlates to the Bible scripture, do not be conformed by the pattern of the world,
Oh, sure.
but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And that scripture alone, if you can really be present with it, that is key to transforming.
I love that so much. It reminds me in a way that we have two selves.
Mm-hmm.
We have the public self and we have the hidden self, the internal self. And sometimes that public self gets really, I guess, manipulated by our perceptions of other people, what they think of us, what are they imagining, how am I coming across to them, am I measuring up to standards that they may have set for me, and uh, we feel that internally, and then we start having to really, in many ways, perform for other people, and we don't really enter the freedom into what you were just talking about. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
wonderful place to be when you can be there and not feel those pressures and strains always on you. Well, let's look at the issue of emotional capacity. You talk about the emotional pillar, and it
Yes.
focuses on building capacity, if I'm correct, to feel without being destabilized. I think that's
Yes.
some of the language you use in your writing. Well, a president, whether it's a nonprofit, a university, chief fundraising officer, uniquely feels weight, public scrutiny, board pressure, donor expectations, the real feel of rejection that comes when a major gift falls through. You know,
Mm-hmm.
here we were relying on this, we were banking on it, and now it's not there. So,
Mm-hmm.
how does your work on nervous system safety, I think that's language
Mm.
you use, nervous system safety, apply to leaders who must stay emotionally present with a donor who just said no and then walk into a board meeting an hour later?
Right.
And the board's going to say, what happened? So, what's the difference between emotional resilience and emotional suppression in this
Mm.
context?
Okay. Many leaders think resilience means not feeling, to be numb, to compartmentalize. But what they're doing is suppressing, and suppression keeps leaders functional, but it makes them brittle.
Mhm.
So, leaders who suppress emotions often appear strong, but internally they're carrying residue from the rejection, from every interaction. So, it costs them presence, creativity, and relational depth because they're coming from that emotional split. So, emotional capacity, when you're coming from coherence, it's the ability to feel disappointment, pressure, rejection, without collapsing, without being stabilized by it. And leaders with capacity don't harden or detach, they stay present. So
Mhm.
even when a major gift falls or fails to come through, because their inner life isn't being avoided or overridden, they can stay present through the transaction, they can stay curious, they can evolve, they can do a lot of things and not be defined by the rejection, which limits their capacity emotionally, relationally. So it becomes a distortion when we suppress our emotions. And the capacity, emotional capacity, it's what allows us to stay open and grounded. And that presence changes conversations. That presence shifts the room. So again, all the three questions that you're asking me, they feed off each other.
Mhm.
So why do we need to steer the conversation? It's because emotionally we've been suppressing. We don't feel whole
Sure.
and complete. And we're looking to the outcome to complete us.
Yeah.
So emotional capacity is resilience, but with fullness, with feeling it fully, not avoiding or not even fixing what's missing inside. And what's missing inside is usually that capacity to feel.
Yeah, so rejection comes in a variety of ways, whether it's the major donor that says no, or the board, you know, having a perspective of how they think things should be handled, and it's different than what the leader of the organization is would like to see. And so to be able to be present in that moment and not to become overwhelmed, because when you become overwhelmed, it does show itself. It manifests itself.
And oh, what
You're
is overwhelmed? It's the energy of fear, right? There's a fear underneath the overwhelm.
right. So to not put a bind around myself to sort of contain myself from exploding at everybody, but to learn how to, and this matter of resilience, it really, in some ways, yes, it happens in life, but it happens also when you're quiet and you can
Mm-hmm.
reflect and ponder on who are you and why did you respond that way, and what would it look like to be different, to change the narrative. So it's really a combination of my inner self when I'm by myself and how I view myself, and then publicly how I'm handling situations, knowing how I handled it, and
Mm-hmm.
knowing maybe, okay, next time I don't want to do it that way. I want to change. I want to change how I see myself, and in light of that, how I respond.
That is really the point. That point of awareness. That what you thought the false perception of self, whether it's the ego trying to protect itself or show its best self to others, or the ego overly projecting itself into the world like they're the answer to everyone's prayer. Those need reflection because those are mechanisms that hide the true self.
Yeah. Okay, here's the last major question. We'll have a few short ones at the end, but um, talking about embodied action versus transactional hustle.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So here it is. Your physical pillar emphasizes embodied action, I think is the language you use, and creating results from integrity, not strain. Yet fundraising can feel inherently transactional. Tracking metrics, how many calls were made, what's the cultivation timeline with this major donor, what kind of solicitation strategy are we going to use? So the question is this: how could a president and executive of a nonprofit bring what you call intention into the body during donor work so their actions align with identity rather than desperation on a quota driven hustle? So, what would change in their actual donor interactions if they led from this integrated place rather
Right.
than the pressure to hit some sort of goal that's out there?
Right. And I love it because as you're naming it, I could feel the overwhelm rise within me.
Sorry, sorry for doing that to you.
Well, it's true. And then that sense of overwhelm then pushes us to hustle, doesn't it?
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
Yeah, we hustle because we're pressured to create results. Whereas integrity in alignment is allowing results to emerge and not trying to control it. There is such a distinction. So hustle often looks like faithfulness. We're being
Mhm.
faithful, right? But internally, it's usually driven by pressure to hit the numbers, like you said, to meet expectations, to prove one's worth. Whereas integrity is really different. It's action coming from alignment, not force, not strain, not manipulating the outcome. When leaders act from integrity, in your case, donor conversation would stop feeling transactional, like the story about the executive director at the nonprofit. There's less urgency, less self management, more grounded presence. There's that you can open up to this person. You feel
Mhm.
safe with this person. There's that nervous system regulation that we talked about in being able to feel your emotional capacity. I hope you're seeing that these four pillars are so integrated you really cannot deal with them one by one, but you can connect the dots.
Sure.
Oh, you know, and the pillars that we are talking about is the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual pillars. And if you just function from one of the pillars, you don't feel complete and cohesive as a person. You're always trying to look to the external to fill yourself up. And so I read a book written by Stanley Tam. And I think the story was he was so anxious about how to make his business work. He was so driven by anxiety, and I felt it too. Just before I made Christ the CEO of my life and
Yeah.
business, because I was so much in the mental space, I was pulling my hair out, and I really resonate with his story where if I don't control it, it will collapse. If like growth depends on me doing something. So I love his story that once he stopped carrying the business as proof of himself, his posture shifted. He relaxed.
Mhm.
Decisions became clearer. Actions became calmer. And I know that it's true because I was also, like, as I was reading his book, I was also calming in myself, and I followed his direction or recommendation, suggested recommendation of the book.
Sure.
So hustling is no longer required to force outcome, rather acting from stewardship. These are my talents, these are my resources. How can I work from this, multiply it rather than suppress
Mhm.
myself, be limited by false narrative that are not even mine,
Yeah.
right? Or perform, perform to be liked. So we're moving out of that into integrity, into the truth of who we are, and then we can then move decisively without sacrificing presence or connection, the real relational depth.
So, in concluding, I've got a couple of quick questions at the end, but sort of wrapping everything together here, what advice would you give to an executive in a nonprofit to do over the next 90 days
Mm.
that would change the way they look at fundraising?
Couple of things actually comes to mind. Read a couple of books, The Soul of Money by Lynn Twist and maybe the Stanley Tam, because it shifts your perspective. perception and it changes your heart.
Hmm. That's and that's critical, isn't it?
Yeah, and those are two books that I've read myself that coming from the Philippines, from always doing,
Yeah.
you have to in order to,
Hmm.
and relaxing into, wait a minute, I've got it all backwards. I'm sourcing it from need rather from the wholeness of who I am.
Yeah. And that's you're sourcing it from scarcity, then, aren't you?
Correct.
Hmm.
And again, that's inherited and proven by circumstances, right? You
Yeah,
look around you, that's what you see, therefore it is.
for sure. This has been so insightful. So here's a couple of quick ones at the end, more on just who you are as a person. What's the best piece of professional advice you have ever received?
Uh, yeah, that book by Stanley Tam. And I spent a lot of money on personal development. That's not my advice. But the
Yeah.
thing is, invest on yourself,
Oh, yeah.
in you, not necessarily pay other people money, but invest the time to get to know you. Invest, like, bet on yourself.
Yeah.
That would be, if there is one line that I learned over the years from the gurus that I followed, it's bet on yourself.
Yeah. That's so good. Second question, what's one daily habit you cannot live without?
It's the inner awareness, and you can call it stillness, you can call it meditation, you can call it contemplation, you can call it sitting with the Bible. It's getting to know your inner room.
And what makes up that inner room?
So remember when we talked about suppressing the feelings? Sometimes it's confronting that, sometimes it's confessing that, sometimes it's owning up to that, so you can be free and clear of what you judge yourself. And sometimes it's a vision. This is what I say, no more split. That is my word of the, or my conviction of the year, no more split. From now on, I'm living from integrity. So how do I come up with that? It's because of that inner room, my connection with it. And you can call it connection with Christ, connection with the Holy Spirit, connection with your higher self, your inner self. It's called many ways, but it's that inner room where your soul is.
So good. So imagine this, Tess. You're back in being 20, which is a few years ago for both of us. Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
Oh, just have fun.
Let the pressures go.
Just have fun and explore. But then my 20-year-old self didn't know any better, right? I was overly protected. It was when I moved out of the Philippines, we all migrated, the whole family migrated to Canada, and then I moved here. That I learned there were other dimensions of myself, not just the protected, naive girl that I was even at 20. So, but she's always bold. She's always exploring, but she was always, told not to speak up. So keep
Yeah.
doing what you're doing. Speak up, even if it gets you in trouble, because that is the truth of who you are. And whenever there's that energy inside of you to speak up, to grow, to expand, to break bounds, follow it. Don't
Yeah.
believe the inherited beliefs.
Next question. What's a failure from your past? This is going to be a little personal here that
Mm.
really you ended up realizing it was setting you up for success?
It would be the burnout. It would be the burnout, the awareness that so others had have addictions to alcohol and all other bad habits, but workaholism is similar.
Hmm.
The destruction of it is not as evident. I can't blame alcohol for my workaholism. It was more of an internal process. Why am I working so hard? Right? So there is a deep need inside of me. And so what was your question again? The
Oh,
failure.
what did you learn? How did it set you up for success?
Yeah, remember when I said earlier that the dynamic in that nonprofit changed? That was my
Mhm.
last accounting job. And
Right.
that taught me that there's more to me than giving myself up working for somebody or someone, even my kids. Because I was working because I was a single mom. I was working
Mhm.
so hard that I left nothing for myself. And I realized it taught me where the burnout came from. And the success in that is the wholeness of me that I am now
Mhm.
sharing in this podcast. It's the wholeness of that created the burnout, that created the desire to please others, that feeds into the perfectionism, the procrastination, and all those isms that we think we're broken, but we're not. We're just really fragmented. And
Right.
the success is coming from a cohesive place, integrated, whole, complete.
Right. And this ties comes to the last question. What's a favorite place you like to go to sort of rejuvenate, disconnect, recharge, to find that inner self?
It's many dimensions. It's not just in my room reading the Bible or reading another book, or it's everywhere I can fully express myself, whether it be singing. I host karaoke on the side. Whether it's dancing, whether it's going out in nature, and that's mostly I have dogs like you saw earlier. They keep me accountable. They keep me honest. So we're always in nature. And
Okay.
anywhere that you can meet a higher version of yourself, I feel we're also meeting with our Creator,
Yeah.
how God intended us to be, to function.
Mm. Well, Tess, this has been a delight interviewing you, knowing some of your story, things that you've learned, and just the sort of finding the cohesive part of our lives where things you talk about fragmenting and bringing back into a wholeness, which is so critical for leaders to be effective.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I know leaders who operate out of a fragmented world, and it wreaked havoc in the
Mm.
organization and was very, in many ways, destructive. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I'd love for you to share a little bit in closing how people can reach out to you, how they can connect with you. I know you provide different services to individuals, so take a moment just to share what that is.
Sure. If you go to my website, tessvergara.com, TESSVERGARA, you'll see a lot of the essays that I write on No More Split. You see a lot of the blogs that I write now. It's becoming more the foundation of everything I write, everything I talk about is about No More Split. It's leadership from alignment. And you have two ways of working with me: one on one. If there's unresolved issues that's splitting you up inside, yeah, come and check out my website. Or I see it as like a cross, right? The inner coherence, the vertical alignment.
Yeah.
That's work to bring all. I go with the policy of no parts left behind, bringing all the pieces back together.
I'm sure.
Yeah, for that vertical integration, vertical alignment, and then well, some leaders do expand their reach, and that's how they fill themselves up. And so that's where kingdom factor comes in. So you can steward, so two different ways of working with me through peer group cohort, through kingdom factor. I'm a kingdom factor coach, and also through soul powered executive coaching, and that's the work that is deep, deep, deep in my heart and soul.
Yeah. Well, thank you for how you add value to so many people. You
Thank
know,
you.
I think in life we meet people that it may be for a brief time. I can think of one person particularly in my life that I intersected with for a brief time, but it was transformational. It changed the direction and the trajectory of my life. So I
Hmm.
know that is what your intent is with others, and so grateful for that. So thank you for being with us. And again, my name is Randy Dirks, host of Funding the Future, and you can find me at randydirks.com. And with that, we'll end. So thank you, Tess. Appreciate it so very much.
Thank you so much, Randy. God
Bye.
bless.